Hi there, this is Tattoo Jared. In this video, we're going to talk about the slow death of the middle class. In JFK's inauguration speech, he said the famous quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country?" Now, that statement is very important for what we're going to talk about in this video because it's very likely that each one of you out there is contributing in no small part to the disappearing of the middle class. And we're going to talk about two examples today. The first one, because I'm in it currently, is Lyft and Uber. Lyft and Uber have come onto the scene, I think back in 2013 and 2014, and they took the market by storm. They were charging less than the traditional taxis at the time, and they were basically able to kill a huge chunk of the taxi business. Now, I'm in a unique position. I've done both before. I was a taxi driver before Uber came around for about a year, and now I do Lyft now. And when I was a taxi driver, I made way much more money. Now, the minimum fare for the taxi was $10, for example. And now with Lyft, I'm lucky to make $10 a ride ever because you barely ever get over much more than $1 a mile. Now, the traditional taxi used to be a good middle-class job. But what Uber and Lyft have done is because they have made the rates so much cheaper, which they are only able to do, mind you, because they've been able to avoid regulations that the taxis do have to pay. Taxis have to pay the city, taxis have to pay taxi insurance, and Lyft and Uber are like, well, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to leave it up to the drivers if they want to go call their insurance companies and tell them, oh, by the way, I'm also driving this car commercially, and please add another $200 to my bill, please. So most people, though, what they do is they look at the prices of Uber, Lyft versus the traditional taxis, and they say to themselves, well, I'm going to save $1 and take Uber or Lyft. And this is the exact mindset that allows something like this to occur, the death of a middle class, where corporations, they have the means to make things so much cheaper than a mom and pop place does, right? These mom and pop taxi companies, I'm not saying they were perfect. I'm not saying they were always saints. I've heard stories, and maybe they didn't do their best job to innovate their industry, but that was local people in those taxis, right? You knew those people. You were on a friendly basis with them. But now, with Lyft and Uber, it's very distant and very cold. You may never have the same Uber driver twice or the same Lyft driver twice. And now the taxi business has turned into a gig, mostly for college students, because in order to make it a full-time wage with Lyft now, my lord, you'd have to work 60, 70 hours a week, and it's absurd. So this is one example of where people are choosing to spend less money, and it's hurting a middle-class job, which used to be the taxis, but now it's not. Now, the taxi, just like Lyft and Uber, it's just a gig. And Lyft and Uber would be better if they charge a little more, right? But they don't, because they wanted all the business, and Lyft and Uber compete with one another, so they're always undercutting each other's prices. Drivers are killing their own cars and spending their money on gas and being taxed at the end of the year. So it's convenient to work when you'd like. You can make a little bit of money, but hardly worth it if you ask me. The other example we're going to talk about is Home Depot and Lowe's versus the mom and pop hardware store. Now, mom and pop hardware stores used to have a relationship with the community, but since they didn't have the bulk means of production that Home Depot and Lowe's have, they had to charge a little bit more money than what Home Depot and Lowe's does. And Home Depot, in particular, what they did was at first they would actually have a plumber in the plumbing department. They would have a carpenter in the lumber department. And they would actually pay them a good middle class wage, $20, $25 an hour, which even that's a little low at this point, but that's besides the point. And you actually had people in there that knew what they were talking about. But once the hardware stores started to go out of business, and there's very few hardware stores nowadays, very few. And once they started going out of business, they stopped doing that. Now, almost everyone you see at Home Depot is only making between $10 to $12 an hour, unless they're the general manager of the whole store, which is ridiculous. And now, it's very rare that you actually had an ex-plumber in the plumbing department, or a carpenter in the lumber department. Now you just have a $10 to $12 an hour employee. And this is another example of people doing something out of convenience, doing something because it's cheaper, and look at how it's hurt those small businesses. When you help small business, you help local, you help your own community. The price is you got to pay a little more. And guess what? Most people are not willing to pay that price. And so that's why you see things like Uber and Lyft and Home Depot and Lowe's come in and smash the competition. So the next time you want to complain about the slow death of the middle class, think about the JFK quote. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? And one thing you can do for your country is shop local. Spend a little more money in order to help out your own community and to not help the CEO of Home Depot, Lowe's, Uber, or Lyft buy their 5th luxurious home and their 4th Maserati or Bugatti. Think about that, because the customer has ultimate power. They can ultimately decide where they want to spend their money. They are in control. The corporations, in the long run, they are a slave to the customer. And smart businessmen know this, because a customer can fire, hire, and eliminate a business by just choosing to spend his money somewhere else. It is really that simple. Customers, consumers, you have the power. You can decide where you want to spend your money. Do not ever take this for granted. So there's my spiel about the slow death of the middle class. Please like or subscribe and try to find me on Patreon, as I've created a Patreon account as well. And I'm hoping to be making videos more consistently. Thank you, and have a great day.